Welcome to the broadcast. Today we're going to answer the question, can I learn Serbian and another foreign language at the same time? The answer? Inside the broadcast. Let's go. So can you learn Serbian and another foreign language at the same time? Well, here's the short answer. Yes, of course you can. But here's an even better question. Should you? And the answer to that? It depends. Are the right conditions being met? So let's go into what those actually are. Here are some of the top questions you should be asking yourself if you are considering learning Serbian and a second or third foreign language at the same time. The first question you want to ask yourself is, do you have an intermediate or upper intermediate capability in a second language? So perhaps let's say, for example, use myself as an example. I'm a Spanish and Portuguese speaker in addition to English. But before I started actually learning Portuguese, I first got really strong in Spanish first, and then I began to go into Portuguese. And by very strong, what I mean is I got into an upper intermediate category. I could converse, I was somewhat conversational. Spanish was not a foreign concept for me in terms of understanding the grammatical rules. And from there, I traversed into Portuguese. I got into an upper intermediate to advanced level there, and then I went into Serbian. That's a very important question for you to ask yourselves. Do you have an upper intermediate level of your second foreign language? If not, then I would caution you and say, hold up just a minute. And the reason why I say it is because your brain architecture needs to be rewired first before you bring in the second opportunity to utilize the new brain wiring. Your goal is to be able to communicate across the tenses and navigate through multiple circumstances within the language because you can manipulate the structures of that language. Again, you want to get to where you can do this with proficiency in your first foreign language before you bring on the second one. You'll see sports players do this a lot. A lot of world-class sports players become world-class in one particular area first, and then they apply the skills they acquired in their first sport into their second sport. The second tip that you should be asking yourself, what are your goals? What are your goals? What are you really trying to achieve? Again, if your reasons are strong enough and you have the right goals, it's going to be significantly easier to traverse through multiple languages simultaneously. But what are you trying to achieve? And it's important also here to say, perhaps you even have a primary, secondary, and tertiary goal. Maybe it's your goal to be fluent in Serbian or highly proficient to where you can go and converse with locals and order food and engage in all the wonderful things that language learning empowers you to engage in. And perhaps in your second language, your goal is to just be somewhat conversational in the beginning. So just make sure you understand what your goals are. If your goals are to be fluent or highly proficient across multiple languages, make sure you're doing them in order. You have one language, your native language. Your second language, you want to get to intermediate or upper intermediate. Once you're there, it's okay to switch into your third language. Same thing, your third language, your intermediate or upper intermediate. Bring on your fourth, but be careful about trying to navigate through 2 or 3 languages simultaneously and you don't have a strong connection to at least one language at an upper intermediate level. Again, the hardest part about language learning is that very first language. It's true. Once you get proficient in your first foreign language, going to your second is going to be wildly easier because your brain has synthesized what it means to communicate effectively in a second language. Now you can apply those skills to your next. So just keep that in mind. Tip number 3, be technical in how you plan out your study time. So I'll give you an example of how I do this. So as a Spanish and Portuguese and Serbian learner, what I like to do is I will study Serbian 5 days a week. That's right. Monday through Friday, I'm going to study Serbian. And when I say study, what am I doing? I'm hopping on Serbian language podcast. I'm going through lesson videos. I'm going through the video podcast that they have. I'm doing the PDF downloadable study guide practice problems. I'm speaking with the tutor once a week. And this is how I'm studying Serbian. Now, it's more low stakes in terms of how I practice my Spanish and Portuguese because I have a higher command of proficiency in those languages. And so my goal is to keep them up and to improve upon them in a way that I can sustain. So what I'll do is Mondays and Wednesdays, that is Portuguese time. I'm going deep into my reading literature. I'm having a private Portuguese class. I'm getting onto my Portuguese language resources so I can continue to hone my grammatical ability to navigate across the different verb conjugation tenses. Then for Spanish, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, It's all Spanish time. Same thing that I do for Portuguese, I do for Spanish. And so I have it calendared out. It's very, very technical on my calendar when I'm going to study which language, and I don't leave it to chance. I have it calendared, and you need to do that too. So if you're studying multiple languages, to ensure that you're staying consistent across those languages, calendar your time. Tip number 4, what languages are you studying? This has a huge impact on how you want to create your study plan for the multiple languages that you're studying. Now, a lot of people think if you study languages that are similar to each other, it's going to be easier. And I would say to that, as someone who's done it, learning Spanish and Portuguese, it depends. And again, it depends on your proficiency level when you begin that next language. So as a Spanish speaker, I wanted to make sure that I was at an upper intermediate to advanced level of Spanish before I brought on Portuguese. This really paid off. One of the things I'll see a lot from people who speak Spanish and Portuguese, if they didn't do that and they came in with a lower level proficiency of Spanish and then tried Portuguese, they'll end up speaking what's called portañol. And that's where they combine Spanish and Portuguese because their brain has not yet synthesized the differences between the two languages. So the acquisition of the new language, in this case Portuguese, starts to actually draw from what you've learned, what that person has learned from Spanish. You can defeat that in advance by getting to a high level proficiency first in your first language that's similar, and then bringing on your second language. Now, you don't have to worry about that if you're learning Mandarin, Chinese, and Serbian and French. Those are 3 wildly different languages, 3 very different grammatical systems, 3 languages who express time and the word order and sentences a bit differently. Verb conjugations differ. The inclusion of a declension system in the case of Serbian. So in that event, if you're learning 3 very different languages, the point that I spoke to earlier does not necessarily apply. But the principle of getting advanced in your first foreign language first still does apply because, again, you want to change your brain architecture, which will make it easier for you to bring in that second and third language, at which point in time, there's really no end. You can learn as many languages as you want, but just be technical in how you do that and aware of the challenges associated with different language groups simultaneously. Tip number 5, the key is keeping consistency throughout. Again, as I expressed earlier about my study plan for how I study my different languages that I'm learning, I make sure that I don't leave it to chance. I'm constantly staying on top of when, where, and how I'm going to study the languages, and I just keep that as a part of my life. That's the most important thing too, because what you're going to find a lot of times, and I've spoken to lots of polyglot friends who also attest to this point, if you're learning 3 or 4 languages simultaneously and you forget to study one, you're going to be more inclined to not want to study the others, and before you know it, you slash all the tires on the car and you just quit studying languages and go, oh, I can't do this. And it's not true. Of course you can do it. It's just your system of doing it wasn't really setting you up for success. So set yourself up to be successful by not leaving it to chance, being technical in how you calendar it, analyzing the languages that you're learning, making sure that you're appreciating the different challenges that that's going to present for you, and staying the course throughout. If you do that, you're going to make it and you're going to do great. So if you enjoyed this broadcast, I encourage you to please give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let us know what you think in the comments. What languages are you learning? Are you studying multiple languages simultaneously? And if so, how is it going for you? Can't wait to engage with you guys, and thank you so very much for tuning in to this broadcast, and we'll see you in the next one. So long.